Hello and welcome to the next in our series of Blue Deal debates, when we discuss our seas, the fishing industry and our marine environment. I'm Chris Davies. I'm a former chair of the Fisheries Committee in the European Parliament, and this webinar is presented thanks to the sponsorship of Ruud Pedersen Public Affairs Consultancy in Brussels. Now, it's well known that arguments about fisheries gained high-profile attention during the negotiations to secure a trade and cooperation agreement between the EU and the UK. They were a real sticking point. Agreement was reached with the end of the Brexit transition period just days away. And it's not one that's pleased both sides, but then perhaps it never could. And in theory, it's an agreement that only lasts until June 2026. So the arguments could begin again before too long. It's also an agreement that has left many details still to be resolved. So I'm very pleased to have the opportunity today to discuss all these issues with Charlina Vitcheva, the Director General of DG MARE, the Commission's Fisheries Division. Director General, Charlina, thank you very much for joining me. The plan for the next hour or so is for us to discuss the issues in some detail and then throw this open perhaps to those who've emailed questions during the course of the webinar. And I hope if you can stay for half an hour or so at the end, then we'll have a chance to work through the questions that are sent in. Okay, well, I wonder if we could just start by putting a bit of colour on the scene. I mean, I'm going to go into details of quotas and you know the details that are in the agreement shortly. But I wonder, you know, we were following this in the newspapers in the days before Christmas, and there seemed to be very little movement. And I just wondered what it was like for you. You were there in the room in the Berlaymont. I mean, nothing seemed to happen for day after day. Is that the case?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon to all the audience. I know that it's a very rich audience that you're having, and it's my pleasure to be able to talk about this agreement now that we have more than a month passed from this saga of negotiations. Indeed, until the very end, we didn't have a breakthrough on the fisheries chapter, and it was really held as the last card on the British side, which is understandable because that was the big interest to sustain the status quo for the European Union. So it was quite logical that that was the last one, the last chapter that was there to release the steam out of the negotiations. So. Indeed, the negotiations continued at the end in Berlaymont, and I have to say that the president and the president's cabinet was very much involved at the end, alongside, of course, with our chief negotiator and our team, and our commissioner was there. So it was quite an intense, sleepless nights and intense days negotiations.
But you both started off, both the UK and the EU, from very absolutist positions. Neither wanted to make any change at all. And then, as I see it, the UK eventually came down to, I think, saying, no, we only want 80% of the fish currently being caught in EU waters, or by the EU's fleet is catching in UK waters. And then I think they came down a bit more to 60%. And then we were told there was simply no agreement and all the negotiations were stalled. And then suddenly, I mean, it comes down to just 25%. I mean, that's a huge shift from the British side. Did you always expect that? Did you just see the British position as a stalling position, or did you expect them to give in so much?
Yeah, thank you for this question, Chris, because it very much explains how the whole negotiations cycle was presented in the press. Actually, indeed, the two sides had absurdly different positions, and we were sticking to our positions until the very end. I have to say, and this is what we discussed right before we started the live interview, if we manage something better on our side than the British side, because you would not hear too much from me, criticizing the British side. No, I would not do that. But what we managed better was to manage the expectations. So our sector knew that we have to move, and our starting position was the status quo. Of course, it stayed until the very end, and we had to compromise at the very end, but at least we knew that we have to move at one point. On the other side, we had some bombastic demands, and during the negotiations, one of the very often used terms by my side personally was that the British side should realize, and I'm sure that they were quite realistic, that there is a break even. So you can't expect that you will be interested to get access to the British waters if all the fisheries opportunities for these waters will be taken away quota-wise. So it was clear that there is a break even. So 80% was, of course, at the beginning, it was even, I would say, doubling the fishing opportunities of what the UK fished in the exclusive economic zone of the UK. Doubling it didn't make any sense, because UK, even before separating from the EU, they were fishing much more than the rest of the member states in their own exclusive economic zone. So doubling means that we have to pay, or what? We have to give them more on from our exclusive economic zone. So you see all the paradox about how all this was communicated. Then they went to 80%. Okay, 80% is not the break even. So how can we keep our interest of having access to their waters if we are cut off 80%? So it was clear that this demand was not sustainable. And you're right that it started from 80, then 70, then 60. At one point, at the very end, we heard 35, and at the end, we ended up with 25%, which for me was quite a balanced deal. So I would say that
Well,
I find it a balanced way of
well, okay. You said you've managed expectations and you've
yeah.
got a balanced deal, but I mean, from the British side, it wasn't a compromise down the middle. It was clearly a compromise in which the European Union came out. Their position at the end was closer to the position they started with at the beginning. I mean, not surprisingly, British fishermen, in the newspaper saying this was a betrayal by our negotiators.
So again, we managed the expectations better. We knew that it was like trading into the trading place. You start from a position that is absurd from the British side in order to reach something in the middle. But I myself was saying all the time, don't expect us that you will start from completely unacceptable position so that you can have a high middle position. So it is not possible. And we really were calculating well what can be swallowed by our fisheries industry and our fisheries sector. We couldn't go too much far. And from the very start, I was quite clear with our British friends on the other side that they shouldn't expect miracles. And that was one of the most repetitive narratives, the break-even and what is manageable on our side as cut in order to go for a wider agreement with them. And probably it is good to say that in this battle, because it was a battle, we had a very strong supporter in the face of our chief negotiator, because you can imagine a chief negotiator of a very wide agreement would be of course, the interest of the chief negotiator is to achieve the agreement for the whole of the agreement. And inevitably, you will have to give away certain things, as happens in all negotiations. So we were absolutely lucky with Michel Barnier, who was previously a minister of agriculture and fisheries, who knew the dossier, who knew the stakes of the fishermen, who was all the time in contact with the various stakeholders, and actually he supported this part of the agreement very solidly.
All right, okay, but as I say, the British. I mean, I remember Michel Barnier making exactly those points to me. Then that he was reminding me that he was a former French fisheries minister. This is before Brexit had actually taken place. But okay, but on the British side, though, the cries from the fishermen are that they've been betrayed by their governments, by their negotiators. Have you, on the other hand, had lots of thank you letters from fishermen in Europe?
I have to say that uh, the mood was moderate. From the point of view of the cuts, of course, we have some strong positions from the sector, especially from the ones that are most affected, simply because they have much more sharing with the UK. So we have criticism, but this criticism, including in the parliament, you would recall the meeting of the PESH committee where I had to present the agreement. You see that the criticism is there, but they keep on with the realistic narrative that it was inevitable, that the change was there. Whether we can talk about some percentage points more or less, that is really not the focus of the discussion. So I have to say, comparing with what we hear on the other side of the channel, our sector was much more moderate, simply because the cut was not so big as
Well,
and also the difference of what we claim and what happened was not as big. So that's why the betrayal element was not there.
very interesting. Right. Well, let's get down to the details. What struck me when I first opened the fisheries section of the agreements was the obviously the emphasis on sustainability in on the first page. And I just read the first sentence or two, and I remembered back to the debates we had when we were looking at the reform of the common fisheries policy back in 2012. And it's not simply a commitment from both sides to achieving maximum sustainable yield, to stopping overfishing, but it's that word above MSY, that the emphasis being on we must rebuild the fish stocks. And then as you read through the document, there's the references to the need to adhere to best scientific advice, to pay heed to the precautionary principle, data collection, protection of the marine ecosystem. I mean, you must be very happy with that. And both sides signing up to commitments which are the very best of the new CFP.
Indeed, and that was part of the negotiations as well, because if I have to outline the difference in the starting point, I will also pinpoint to the level of ambition and the scale of commitment in this agreement. Because we started with the wish from the British side to have a very light agreement with almost nothing in there and almost everything reported into the annual consultations. And then we ended up with quite an ambitious agreement on which we insisted very much, where all the objectives and principles that you mentioned, they are very much convergent with the common fisheries policy. And one of the hardships for the British colleagues was that they had to, on one hand, differentiate themselves all the time from the CFP. On the other hand, it's really awkward to discard the good principles that are there embedded in the CFP from the agreement. So content-wise, we are extremely convergent, but with the claim, of course, that this is not a CFP agreement. So, but rightly so, we have the precautionary advice on top of the above MSY level ambition. We have the sound scientific advice. We have measures that would avoid unavoidable catch. So we have everything that is in there in the CFP, and that's why we claim it's quite a convergent agreement in terms of objectives and principles, and we are happy with that.
You think there's a meeting of hearts and minds here? You think both sides are genuinely committed to this principle of sustainability?
I hope so.
It had been in the past, but
yes, I hope so, because we have the agreement now. Agreement-wise, we look fully committed, but then the implementation comes. The specialized committee on fisheries will come with all the debates in this platform. We will have the annual consultation, so we will be all the time into exchange, into consultations, and this implementation of the agreement will show how much the two sides are committed.
Yeah, well, we'll get onto that. Good. Right. Okay. Let's look at the first, the major headline, the quota share.
Yes.
So the UK wanted annual negotiations over every shared stock. I think I forget how many shared stocks. Is it 75, 100, something of that number?
Over 100, yeah.
Over 100. Okay.
Yeah.
But you've got an agreement instead that takes us through to 2026. It's on paper, it's fixed, the quota numbers are there. The headline figure is that over the next 5 years or so, the UK will gain quota equivalent to 25% of the value of the EU catch in 2019. I think that's the wording. Now, the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, declared that the UK's share will rise from half to 2/3. And I can't make the numbers add up there. And the BBC, its fact-checking programme, it said, no, in terms of the value of the fish, Britain currently catches about 50% of the value of the fish in its waters, and that will rise to 58%, not 2/3, 58% over the 5 years. Do those numbers sound about right to you? I mean the BBC's numbers, I mean.
Everything is how you round the figures, but of course, if you look at how much UK was having as fishing opportunities and was catching before and after. Indeed, now it is close to 2/3 on the basis of the agreement with the quota shares. And beforehand, I have to say that it was more than 50%, because I said that it was more than 50%. So it is this minus 25% vis-a-vis our share translates into close to 2/3 at the end of the phasing in period, catches in the British EEZ afterwards, so for the UK. So it is relatively, yeah, it depends how you round the figures. As you said, 58% can be communicated as 2/3.
Well, the British National Federation of Fishermen's Organisations says the gain in the UK quota is minuscule, marginal, paltry, pathetic. So obviously they're not very happy with that. I mean, you look at one figure though. I remember during the Brexit debate, the argument about the share out of cod in the English Channel came up all the time. It was said time and again, the arrangement between the UK and the EU is within the EU is fundamentally wrong, because British fishermen only get the rights to fish 9 or 10% of the cod in the English Channel, and the EU, and mainly the French, get the other 90%. And out of this deal, there's hardly any change at all. I mean, 1% or something, virtually no change whatsoever. Now, the scientists might argue we shouldn't be catching cod there anyway, because the numbers are too small. But then you look at the arguments. I mean, the mackerel and the herring side, the pelagic fleet up north in Scotland in particular, seems to benefit and gain an increase in quota. As things stand, the whitefish fleet, the demersal fleet, are saying, with the current arrangements, with quota swapping come to an end, they're worse off. You can see from the British point of view, I mean, you can see why fishermen in Britain are, well, feeling, not your fault, you fought for the EU fishermen, but they're feeling really upset.
Chris, let me tell you that we've been trying to be very constructive in these negotiations, and in the middle of these negotiations at one point, because we realized that there should be some changes, obviously, and we suggested that the UK side will give us their priority. So we started talking about the potential, because everything was really left at the end to be endorsed, because you start without prejudice of the overall completion of the negotiations. And then we really started to accommodate the UK priority. So if the UK side was bringing their priorities and we were trying to be accommodative, so that means that some of these species that you mentioned, they were not a clear priority for them. Secondly, you've said that now the British fishermen and fisherwomen
can I just interrupt you? So just on that old argument, so the cod in the English Channel was simply not a priority for Britain. It never was. I understand it wasn't a priority when negotiations took place when Britain joined the common fisheries policy in the first place. So, it's all been just political rhetoric. But please, I interrupt you.
Yes, and then about the misgivings from the British fishermen and fisherwomen. In the end, all this rhetoric about the devil in the CFP, in the common fisheries policy, turned out to be completely empty, because many of the things, if not, they might claim some administrative burden, and probably many other things that I would not recall all the misgivings that the British side is with which the British side bombards the CFP. But in the end, the CFP looks quite a good setup. We have, as you said, the sustainability objective, very importantly embedded. And on top, the sustainability objectives is coupled with the economic objectives, because the MSY, by default and by virtue, is a combination between sustainability and profitability, because it takes into account the maximum, the optimal catch versus the sustainability of the stock. So starting with that, then we had the swap system, which brings a lot of flexibility, because in the fisheries, all the specialists will know that it's a mixed fisheries normally. So if you don't have the flexibility in between, then so the swaps are really very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll come back to that. But I mean, okay, just looking at it from the other side, though, I mean, the Irish, for example, say that they're going to lose out to a greater extent than other fishermen in Europe. But as I understand it, the European fishing fleets will, where there was a quota cut, it will be shared in proportion to, following the principles of relative stability. It'll be cut proportionally. So no one country within the EU should lose out more than another. Is that right? But there's bound to be some problems.
Yeah, that was our aim always. Whatever cut we're going to agree to, the difficulty of the exercise, and that's why we need our precious specialists. And I have to really make a very good point now for the team that came from DG MARE. They're fantastic. They know the sector inside out. They know the CFP inside out. They have systems where the calculations can be made usefully, so that we can achieve the balances inside. So our basic aim all the time was, on one hand, to have the priorities on the UK side, to the extent we can meet them. I'm not saying that we met all the priorities, but our genuine wish was to accommodate them, because if we're making a cut, it's better that it accommodates someone. And then this cut was also tailored from the point of view of how the burden will be shared among the member states concerned. So our try was all the time to level out the impacts. Of course, you can't achieve full and 100% leveling out, because some countries are have more to share with the UK than others, and this is actually very much the case for Ireland, for France, but also for Belgium, in different proportions. But it was really difficult to calibrate this leveling out of the burden between the member states. I think that we achieved a lot.
You've obviously done your best to go in the right direction. There may be some teething problems at the edges, but I mean, has the European fishing industry got much to complain about, really? I mean, at the Fisheries Committee debate in the European Parliament about 3 weeks ago, one member raised the fact that the Dutch fishing industry could lose huge sums of money as a result of the deal. But I'm not sure that's true. But
I have to split the problem into two. So one thing is the potential loss. The other thing is how we will go around it, because you know that some of the quotas they change as a result of the swaps, and there are a lot of flexibilities within the quotas as well. So I think that all in all, this minus 25% will be felt less. Of course, some fleets might be touched more than others, and that is the difficulty, and that is why, if that was not the case, we wouldn't have designed the BAR, the Brexit Adjustment Reserve. So the Brexit Adjustment Reserve is exactly for these parts of the fleet where we can incur a higher cost of loss than elsewhere. So I recognize that for some fleets it might be harder than for others, but the huge losses I would avoid using this term.
Yeah. Okay. Can I just throw in a side question here, because the EU is stuck over many years now to the principle of relative stability established back in the 1980s. But fish scientists would point out that with climate change, fish populations are moving. So surely the time is going to come when you're going to have to re-examine this principle of the share out between countries, between quota, this principle of relative stability. Is that recognized?
For the moment, we don't have such plans. I don't see it on the horizon, but I think that we have so much on our plate at the moment to open a Pandora box. Honestly, I don't think that there will be an appetite in doing that. Secondly, we really need to see first the dust settling down to see the real repercussions of Brexit. And what we are doing now in DG MARE, I have initiated a task force where all the impacts of Brexit will be assessed, and we will try to incorporate them also in the report that is due next year on the common fisheries policy and its implementation. So we have to assess how the Brexit will impact. So it will come now, and many of the impacts probably that have been assessed as heavier might realize and materialize in a lighter form. So I think that we need some dust settling first. And for the relative minus 25%, I don't think that will be the trigger for opening the Pandora box.
Interesting. I think if the UK had stayed within the European Union, then perhaps some British members would have been arguing that we would need to look at this relative stability share again. But anyway, time has moved on, and we can understand where you're coming from. Okay, let's look at the other another key figure, which is the fishing in the British territorial waters, the 6 to 12 mile period. Now, I suppose for anyone who's any supporter of Brexit, to at least be allowed to have exclusive rights to fish within your 12-mile area would have been regarded as de rigueur, but they've not got that. In fact, European fishing boats will continue to fish as they have done for many decades, perhaps centuries. Again, I'm surprised that the UK gave in on that. I mean, I would have thought that was a fundamental sticking principle, more than perhaps the overall share of quotas.
Yeah,
you obviously, I mean, let me reverse that question. You obviously pushed very hard for European fishermen to continue to be able to fish in those waters.
Absolutely. So if I have to reassure the sector, if there are people they are listening to this interview, we were struggling like hell for every percentage point, for every parameter of this deal and the territorial waters, because it is, as you said rightly, and that was one of my arguments all the time, it is a centuries pattern. You can't take away something that is a traditional historical pattern of economic activity. So in the end, of course, there was a huge resistance, and I have to admit that element was negotiated at the very last moment of the deal. But in the end, it was clear that we cannot go away without these fisheries that was happening for so many decades, and that is the livelihood of some very important coastal communities for us. So indeed, that was a very hard push, and I have to say that again, everybody was around the table. Not only DG MARE team and the commissioner, we have a vested interest, but also Michel Barnier and his team, and also the president and the president's cabinet. So everybody was very tough on this point.
But at some point, the British side gave in on it. Now, I don't know who ultimately.
At the very end, yeah.
At the very end. So basically, someone made a call to Downing Street at some point and said, "Can we surrender on this?" I mean, it's not for you to. That's not a question you can answer, I suppose, but at some point, someone gave the decision that the UK could surrender its position. Now, the boats have to be, if a boat that is going to fish in those territorial waters has got to be registered, I think. And is that process underway now? Is that, in fact, maybe it's complete?
Yes, and I have to say a very good word now for the cooperation that is happening between the two administrations, ours and the UK administration. That was, I think, if we don't have too much criticism to us, it is also because we obviously and visibly made all the effort to ensure continuity at the beginning of the year. So what we managed, and that was due to the very good cooperation between the two teams, because we couldn't have done that only on the European side. So we had all the preparations with all the vessels list. I'm talking about the bigger picture now, not just the territorial waters. So we really managed to produce the list, to send them to the UK side. Then they gave us their list, and on the 1st of January, 0.1 minute, we had a continuity. So we had thousands of vessels that were authorized with issued licenses. And that happened between the 24th of December and the 1st of January. So you can imagine what an effort was that. For the territorial waters, so it was, at the beginning we started with provisional licenses, and then now we are moving to full licenses. For the territorial waters, we need more data to supply, because in the agreement we have a provision which requires that the vessels that will be authorized there needs to show anteriority of activity. So this type of anteriority track record, and this is not for the period immediately before the UK left the EU. This is for the period 12-16. So you can imagine. Yeah,
it's only they only have to demonstrate 1 day a year or something of fishing in those waters in order to have a historic continuation.
No, it's a bit more, but what the difficulty is that if you don't have VMS data, so vessels monitoring system stands for VMS. If you don't have this data positioning, sighting data, where you can show that the ships, the vessels were there in the waters with a certain speed to show that actually they were fishing, because they might be staying there simply. So this data is gathered. It takes more time. So let's put it simply like this. And especially for the small fishing vessels, we don't have VMS data, and we need other data to substantiate the anteriority. So for this reason, we have started the process. We have now 76 vessels, European vessels, of which we have 17 Belgian and 59 French, that are authorized to fish in the territorial waters. This is the 612 nautical mile zone. And for the remaining part, we are still supplying data, and the process of authorizations will be completed. But I have to say that it goes quite well. No bottlenecks at the moment.
Okay, well, thank you. Let me just say, as we're half an hour into this discussion, that this is a Blue Deal debate, promoted and sponsored by consultancy Wood Pedersen Public Affairs in Brussels. I'm Chris Davies, and I've got the opportunity now to interview the Director General of DG MARE in the European Commission, Charlina Vitcheva. Now, next, non-quota species. Doesn't sound very exciting, but what are they? How significant are they to the European fishing fleet? Because, as I understand it, the patterns of fishing can go on as they were as before 2016. I'm not quite sure what this means. What are the non-quota species?
These species are actually the ones that are not covered by the annexes that you have in the regulation, in the agreement. So we have a couple of annexes. So these are species that are not governed by total allowable catch provisions. And actually, for them, these non-quota species, we have the possibility to fish them still in the UK waters, but there is a limitation that the overall volume cannot go beyond what we have been fishing before the divorce with the UK. So that was a very important element for us. We had the good understanding on the side from the UK, so that was one of the elements that was not as contentious. But we will see now how we're going to regulate these non-quota species, because there are some disciplines that probably will come to this type of fisheries.
Why do we have these non-quota species? I mean, why haven't we got the scientific assessments and therefore catch limits set upon them?
I think it is. I'm not sure there, so I make an excuse if I'm doing a little bit of an error here and there. But my understanding is that it is to what extent the volumes that we fish, and also regionally, because now we have some quotas that are very few tons, and also the data collection. If you don't have enough data and scientific advice, then and if they're not commercially so much prominently in the priorities, then they're not covered by tax.
Well, just moving on from non-quota to quota swaps, this arrangement that has currently the previous arrangements have ceased. Now, The demersal, the whitefish fleet, for example, in Scotland, would say that the fact that the arrangements for quota swapping have come to an end really puts them at a severe disadvantage. And yet, I mean, it's recognised, I think, by everyone that quota swaps or some sort of arrangement of this kind, which introduces flexibility, is beneficial to all parties. So how are we going to get, this system up and running again?
Yeah, so many things will be settled from now on. So ending the negotiations and having the agreement sets the basis, but from now on we will have to settle many of the elements in the agreement, including the swap system. As you rightly said, it is of equal importance for the two sides. We started yesterday the annual consultations, the first annual consultations with the UK, and that was one of the issues that we raised on both sides, that we need to find a solution very quickly. We might have some divergences of how to manage it, but there is understanding on both sides that we have to do it pragmatically and as fast as possible. On our end, because we are, of course, all the time in contact with our member states, the Commission is going to prepare a proposal, and we are going to discuss it with our member states. But then it will be very important to see what ideas there will be on the British side. So one of the priorities for the Specialized Committee on Fisheries will be to start with that. I can imagine that will be one of the topics that will set the agenda in the first meetings of this format.
I know some fishermen would say can't come soon enough. Right, the setting of total allowable catches. Now, as we know, the arrangement has been up to now that the ministers of the European Union meet in December, just before Christmas, and the tax for the following year are duly set. I hope, generally anyway, in line with scientific advice. Now, under the new arrangements, those tax are supposed to, the two sides, the UK and the EU, are supposed to come together, listen to the scientific advice, and reach an agreement on December the 10th, I think, each year. But if there's no agreement, then the scientists win 100%. And I mean, from my point of view, I think that's wonderful. I'd rather listen to the scientists than politicians when it comes to this debate. I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, I regard that as a victory for sustainability, and also and the fact that both sides have endorsed this is simply very good news.
I totally agree with you, but the origin of the provisional tax comes from the fact that we were trying to have a fallback position, and I will explain what this fallback position means. From the very start, you pointed out that the UK position was to have annual discussions for everything. Very early in the negotiations, we agreed that at least the quota shares will be attached as an annex to the agreement. Then the access to waters was another key element of the parameters of the deal. And then on the UK side, the narrative was that the access will be linked to agreement on the total allowable catch values. So if you have this link, that means that if you don't agree on the tax, which is an annual exercise, and it is deemed to be annual, so it is not that we were having another option. No, the tax are an annual exercise. As you said, it is every December in the Council for the EU as well. So if we don't have this agreement on the tax, and when we are talking about 75 tax that are going to be negotiated, the figures are different because we also shared a tax that are not only bilaterally managed. So there comes the difference in figures. In the bilateral arrangement, for the annual tax, we have 75, but the bilateral arrangements in the agreement, you have many more, because we have there the sharing with regard to the EU tax, where we share with Norway and some other coastal member states. So coming back to the fallback position. So if we don't have agreed tax, we are losing the access. So how can we give stability to the access? Was to have a fallback position in case we don't agree on the tax in the annual exercise. And here came the provisional tax. And the provisional tax will be the substitute that can carry on the access stability for the next year. Up until the moment we agree on the TAC. And for the first 5 years and a half, this provisional tax can stay by the very end. As you're saying, because they're governed by the scientific advice, which is not always optimal for the sector, because they don't want to listen only to the scientific advice. But I agree that from the point of view of the stocks, this is an excellent situation. So that will trigger, and I think here is the idea that both sides agreed, because that will be a stimulus to agree as fast as possible on the final tax.
Yeah.
So this,
indeed. So issues like choke species and the like can be, it concentrates the mind wonderfully to address these sort of species. And as things stand at the moment, since the agreement was made, there's been a temporary authorization for EU vessels to fish in British waters. But that only lasted 3 weeks. Now, what's happening now about the authorization and the how are European fishermen being told what they can do, how much they can catch?
Yes, indeed, we started because we didn't have the data at the beginning, so we agreed on this provisional 3 weeks, which expired on the 21st of January. On the 21st of January, in the meantime, of course, we were absolutely clear of what type of information each side has to provide for each of the vessels. This information was provided, and on the 21st of January, more than 1,000 of these temporary licenses were substituted by full licenses for the whole 2021. So we will have authorization system for a full year, and then this exercise will be repeated. For the ones that were still not ready, for them, we have another provisional 3-week period of license in order to bridge the gap in a way. So there is 100% continuity there, and we are happy about this solution.
Okay, thank you. Let me turn now to the Specialised Committee on Fisheries. Now, I think there's more than 20 of these specialised committees being set up for different administer different parts of the agreement. On fisheries, it's Article 16. There's 1.5 pages of the agreement simply spelling out what this specialised committee, what the issues this specialised committee has to address. Just shows how much has been not finished yet in reaching a deal. It has, for example, to develop multi-year strategies for the setting of the tax. It has to consider compliance measures such as joint control and monitoring and surveillance. It has to sort out arrangements for quota swaps, which you discussed earlier. I mean, this is quite a committee. I mean, this is almost like Common Fisheries Policy Mark II for those parties involved. And I find it interesting, of course, because the British Foreign Secretary said that the agreement that's been reached between the EU and the UK would mean we get our full control of our fisheries back. But it seems to me that, the specialised committee is where the control really lies. So tell me, I don't know how much work has been done on this, but either in the fishery sector or the others, but who's going to serve on it? When's it going to meet? Who's going to serve on it? How many people are going to be on it? How often will it meet? Where will it meet?
Yeah, Chris, these are all questions for the future, and this is what I meant by saying that the TCA, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, once it was sealed, this is only the beginning. So now we have to establish our new partnership. And yesterday, when I was addressing the two sides, when we started the annual negotiations with the UK, that was my narrative. So we have to build our new partnership now, or remain good partners from the past and put everything into the new setting. Probably I will be a bit more sparing for the UK side here, because the committee will be the engine of cooperation. So a lot of elements of the overall management of resource, of the jointly managed resources, will be settled there. But actually, the two sides really keep their regulatory autonomy. There might be disagreements, even if we have the cooperation forum of the specialized committee. I do not exclude divergences where one party will decide that they will go for regulatory measures that will not be agreeable for the other one. However, this what we managed to establish is to have predictability. First of all, these measures will be discussed. And second of all, there will be a notification and time left for the other party to comment, to express an opinion. And even afterwards, if the measures unilaterally are announced and implemented, they have to be proportionate and non-discriminatory. So there is regulatory autonomy, but we will try. And yesterday, what I was saying again, that since we are so close, the best option will be that we have very convergent measures for the management of the stocks, very convergent regulatory framework, because that will be first good for the sustainable management of stocks, secondly for the level playing field of our operators, and thirdly, it will really bring cooperation at a higher level and will build trust for this new partnership. So let's see how it will evolve, because there might be a bit of a temptation in order to show the differentiation and the control of waters to go a bit astray from some of the probably optimal solutions. I hope not, but I have to recognize that the regulatory autonomy is there and it can be used as much as each party would require or need to do so.
Okay, so we're quite a way to go to set up this committee, and I suppose that's the same for other divisions too. But
Yes.
If I was still a member of the European Parliament or the Fisheries Committee in particular, I'd be wanting assurances from the Commission side. What the UK does is another question. I'd be wanting assurances that the European Commission is going to be fighting to ensure that there is as much transparency about the working of the committee as possible. We would be arguing as a committee that the minutes, the agenda should be published, the minutes should be available, the meeting should be in public or web streamed. We'd want to know who was going to be serving on it. We'd want to ensure there was a degree of accountability and transparency. And I'm absolutely sure that the existing members of the Fisheries Committee will be wanting just the same.
You know that the Commission, I hear some echo, but yeah, you know that the Commission is very much accustomed to transparency and accountability. So these are principles that we stick, no matter whether we talk about fisheries or any other sector or policy. So that will be our policy in general. And of course, since we're going to discuss elements that are so important for the regulatory framework and also for the sector, we are bound to communicate and be transparent with all the stakeholders. So let's see how the specialized committee will be settled. But I took a good note, and I don't think that there will be a problem of being transparent in the workings of this committee.
Well, okay, that's a good assurance. I'm sure you'll be held to account for that at some point by the members of the Fisheries Committee. Okay, can I look now to 2026 and what happens? And also, what happens if the UK were unilaterally to try and change the access arrangements? But above all, what happens at the end of the 5.5 years? Because just 2 weeks ago today, in the House of Commons, the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said, by 2026, the fishing people of this country, Britain, will have access to all the fish in all the territorial waters of this country. We will have El Dorado, he said, for fishermen. So it's not surprising that my former colleague, the chair of the Fisheries Committee in the Parliament, Pierre Kalskin, says that he has doubts about the durability and sustainability of the agreement. And Mr. Bellamy, the Parliament's rapporteur on the subject, says it's just a short-term compromise. Do you see this is a short-term compromise? Is it all going to be renegotiated in 2026?
I'm sorry, but I will divert my opinion from the opinion of the Prime Minister, UK Prime Minister. I don't think so. So first of all, let me put the benchmarks in this agreement. So the first benchmark is the quota sharing. And this is the phasing in of this minus 25%, a quota less of what currently we are fishing again in the UK exclusive economic zone. So it's not from the overall fishing opportunities. From the overall, it is really one digit. So this minus 25% will be phased in the first 4 years, and on the 5th year, we will have the 100% cut implemented. So that is the first benchmark. The second benchmark is 1st of July 2026, and indeed, up until that moment, we have more automatic access to the UK waters, meaning that if we don't agree on the tax, then we have the provisional tax, they can end by the end of the year, and so on. Once we enter into the second period of from the 1st of July 2026, but I would say from 2027, because the opportunities for the 2026 will be already set. So it will be from 2027. Their provisions a bit different. So we have the access by default whenever the tax are agreed. However, if the tax are not agreed, then we have provisional quotas a tax that will cover the first 3 months. In these first 3 months of next year, there is a possibility for both sides to decide to limit the access of the other side. However, if they decide to do so, then there are compensatory measures that can be quite dissuasive for the other party to decide to resort to that. So you see, it is, first of all, if the tax are agreed, then there is no question about the access. Secondly, if we don't agree and then we go into the provisional tax, there are dissuasive measures which are compensatory. So if I'm on the other side, I would not do it, honestly.
I'm sorry, I hear you. I am smiling because when you say these are dissuasive measures, I mean, at the EU's disposal, as a rebut to the UK trying to change these agreements without its support, it can ban UK vessels fishing in EU waters. It can apply tariffs to fish coming into the EU. It can actually apply tariffs on other goods coming from the UK into the EU. And according to the agreement on energy, on the operation of the electricity and gas interconnectors between the UK and the continents, which are vital, of course, for the UK, because the more we invest in renewable energy, the more you need those interconnectors to provide a balance when the supplies are disrupted because the wind isn't blowing. That agreement only lasts until 30th of June 2026, which is the same day as the fisheries agreement is up for renewal. It's a very familiar date. And after that, that energy agreement can only be set annually. So, I mean, the message from the EU is, you want our fish? You play with us, we'll cut off your electricity. I mean, you can't get more dissuasive than that, can you? You haven't.
Honestly, that was the idea of having really the horizontal link between the various chapters, because we were only to lose in the fishery sector. So the only safety net for this sector was to be very well interlinked with the other parts of the agreement. Absolutely so, yes. So the dissuasive effect is rather strong, but if the UK side wants to have this type of strange, for me, full control of their waters, then they have to be prepared to lose a lot on their side. And yeah, you're absolutely right.
I'm sorry, I love your understatement when you say the dissuasive element is rather strong. I think that's and you remind us that this is all interlinked, and the EU has played hardball in the past. I mustn't put words in your mouth, and it's not for you to play the politician. But it seems to me that in the UK over the next few years, there will be increasing demands from some politicians for this deal to be renegotiated, and maybe it's important for fishermen in the UK to recognise just what is in this deal, what the UK has signed up to, under its own free will. And there is no El Dorado. El Dorado is a myth. And people have been fooled once in their expectations of what they could get out of Brexit and out of extra fishing rights, and they shouldn't be fooled again. Would you disagree with what I've said?
No. I totally agree with you. And that's why I said from the very start, one of the fair approach to our stakeholders is to spell out very clearly and realistically what they can expect. And management of expectations is not only easier afterwards when you have to promote what you have done with the deal, but also it is fair to the stakeholders. Promising too much doesn't bring us anywhere. And you see, for me, the sad element around the whole story now is that it builds up hate. And this is something that I would like to avoid. I really want that this partnership now calms down and becomes a real partnership. So we have to stop this hate speech, this unhealthy competition. Chris, it reminds me very much, because I'm coming from Eastern Europe. I hope I'm not hurting anyone, but I really see a situation that reminds me of the Cold War unhealthy competition. So to blacken the other side so that your achievements become hilarious in front of your stakeholders. This is an unhealthy exercise. It's not sustainable for the future. You can't use every opportunity to differentiate yourself so that you show how good now it is that the UK is outside of the EU, and this is at the expense and blackening the background of. And this is what happens now for the vaccines, for example, for the EU. This is extremely embarrassing, and I don't want that this continues. And I hope that there will be no hate accumulated in the fishery sector. We need peace and constructive approach at sea, and I hope that will be achieved.
Can I just ask about one of the ways of achieving perhaps coming together is for better trade. I mean, obviously, it's not simply the tax that have changed and the quota change, which has not been as much as the UK fishing side would like, but also the trade barriers, the non-tariff barriers that have seemed to have sprung up, which have far exceeded the expectations of fishermen. Export certificates, health certificates, and all that, and now we hear that mussels simply can't be exported unless there's cleaning facilities, which we don't possess at the moment in the UK. I mean, huge disruption. Is there any way in which some of this can be eased, in which perhaps there can be some softening, some?
Actually, these are things that come into a different area than mine. But honestly, these are the outcomes of Brexit. And this is not because of the deal. This is the simple fact that now the UK is a third country vis-a-vis the EU. And this is to be accepted. It is called the teething problems. At the beginning it will be harder than afterwards, when the habits will be established. And I would say that these are not exactly non-tariff barriers. These are customs provisions. These are control arrangements. So this is, I would not call it a barrier. These are regulatory requirements which are normal when you have relationship between a customs union, a single market, and a third party. This is very normal. And I have to tell you that it is not unexpected, especially for the providers of fresh seafood. It was not unexpected, and the stakeholders on the other side of the channel knew it, that all these formalities will undermine the value of the goods that they supply every morning in Bretagne. So that was clear, because the freshness is counted in hours. So if you have these procedures that add time on your product, then it loses a lot of its value. And it was known upfront, and it appears much more important than, as you're saying, than this -25, which translates into an increase on the British side in terms of quotas.
I hear that, for example, some British vessels are actually avoiding landing their fish in British ports and are going to Danish ports or even French ports, which obviously doesn't help the British fish processing sector. I don't know. I mean, is this to the advantage of EU fishermen or the EU fishing industry? I suppose it must be, isn't it? Obviously, the fish processing industry is getting more business.
Yeah, actually, we have various stakeholders. One stakeholder are the fishermen, the other stakeholder is the processing industry. And of course, the processing industry would like to have their raw materials. So in any case, some of the interests might be conflicting at certain points, but all in all, for the processing industry, it should be only positive.
Charlina, thank you so much. We're coming to the end of the hour, and I'm going to start looking at questions in a moment. But there's one area I want to touch upon first, which is a remark you made to the Fisheries Committee, where you said that stocks have been rebuilt. We've been rebuilding the biomass of Europe's seas around Britain, about the Atlantic seas, and as a result of that, if we continue, then frankly, the cutting quota for European fishermen will hardly be noticed, or could hardly be noticed in 5 years' time, because the fish availability will increase. I mean, how optimistic are you that we are going to make progress in that way? I mean, that should also benefit, given the partnership we have, that should also benefit British fishermen, shouldn't it? If we can rebuild the fish in the seas.
Absolutely, and I really hope that we will be reasonable, and we will be looking at the bigger picture, because it's not about the percentage of the share, it's about the total amount of which you're going to get this percentage, and this is exactly the issue. So if we have solid biomass and healthy stocks, then this cut on our side will be negligible, and on the British side, maybe there will be El Dorado. So honestly, we have to be really aiming at sustainable biomass, and what we have shown so far with the efforts of everyone, all the member states and the whole sector, including the UK, throughout the many years of implementation of the CFP, we managed to increase by 40% the biomass exactly in Northeast Atlantic. And that is a huge achievement. And if I have to translate it into a figure of profitability, the net profit margin is around 18% in 2018. So you see that the links between sustainability and the economy of the sector is very close. And if we take care, and I'm sure that that will be our main strive. If we ensure the sustainability, then we will have a lot to gain, and we have to forget about the quotas. We will have abundance, hopefully so.
Thank you. You're hearing from Charlina Vitcheva, the Director General of DG MARE, the European Commission's Fisheries Division. I'm Chris Davies, and this is a Blue Deal debate sponsored by Rudd Pedersen Public Affairs, the consultancy in Brussels. We've got another 25 minutes, I think, to look at some questions here. But I'm going to pick you up on that last point, Charlina, because, okay, the biomass of many of the harvested species has increased, and that's a good thing. We're nowhere near the levels we were in the 60s or 70s, but we're a lot better than we were, I think, in the year 2000 or thereabouts. Question is, though, Oceana, the environmental NGO pressure group, put out a press release just a couple of weeks ago saying that 6 out of 10 of the UK's most important fish stocks are overfished or in a critical situation. Now, effectively, the UK fish stocks were European fish stocks until just a few weeks ago. So, how does what they're arguing fit in with what you're saying, that things are looking better and better and the biomass is increasing?
Yeah, Chris, I've seen this audit, and actually it depends what you cover, what the scope of the check will be, and so on. We are very much bound to the ICES advice and the figures that come from ICES, and of course we are following very closely the stocks where the EU only is the manager. So if at the moment we have other interlocutors and third parties around the table, then sustainability might be compromised. So that is one explanation, because the scope there is for the UK stocks. They're not necessarily all shared with the EU. What I can say, probably one additional figure to what I have already quoted, the biomass increased by 40% in the last 10 years, but also the estimation now is that 99% of all the landings of stocks managed by the EU, again, it's not the whole Northeast Atlantic, it's not about all the stocks that are managed by the UK, because there is a lot more. So then we have 99% of the landings that are now at MSY in this area. So these are our figures, and probably it will, to counter a bit, again, I'm not countering because the scope is very important, but our Court of Auditors, and our Court of Auditors is known for being very critical and very detailed in their analysis. Our Court of Auditors recently has made a statement that actually the common fisheries policy improved very much the health of the stocks that are under the CFP. So there are a lot of good signs. I'm not saying that it's all rosy. So we have a lot to do. We have some ailing species, and one of these is, for example, the North Sea cod. So when we talk averages, it's a positive picture. But when we go into some species, there is a lot of room for improvement. That's why we have a lot of work ahead of us, and I count on our British partners that we will do a lot for the sustainability.
Thanks, Charlina. I'm very conscious that the common fisheries policy is generally criticised, and it's been a dreadful policy. But in practice, people don't seem to realise the extent to which there has been a shift in priorities over the past decade or two. And there's many the policy, it seems to me, is much more now looking to the long term, to rebuilding fish stocks. And of course, the evidence is there outside COVID times and outside Brexit disruption in the profits that the industry has been making across many parts of Europe, not least in the UK, which, and certainly until a year ago, had the most profitable fishing industry in Europe. Now, let me turn to a few questions here, some of which I think we can deal with very quickly. I mean, for example, the first one is, did the UK side of the negotiations know what problems there would be in exporting fresh fish or unfrozen fish and seafood into the EU? Well, I'm fairly sure they did, because did the UK realise? Did the UK negotiators realise what it was like to be outside the European Union? I think is the question. Well, I know. I read fishing news here, and I know that there were warnings. There were certainly warnings being issued in that paper about the problems there. So I think,
indeed. The UK, both at the administration level, but also at a sector level, probably not all of them, but at least, for example, the ones that were exporting and still are exporting fresh seafood, they were absolutely clear of what the interruption of trade might mean for them. So probably not all, but the administration was clear about the outcome, and some of the sector were also quite clear what will come out of this deal. Of course, if you trust the expectations of having caught the fish and no one in the waters, if that was trusted, then probably some of the sector was not prepared for this deal, but many were.
Next question is
absolutely clear.
One question here is, it says that some of the market access issues that are appearing now and affecting the export of the exporters of fish from Britain to the continent would have been avoided had the UK entered an SPS zone. I'm not quite sure what that is, but I seem to remember, and the question is, did you actually encourage the UK to consider that option? Now, I understand that the UK negotiators rejected that because it would mean that the European Court of Justice would be involved, and they just would, on a matter of principle, they wouldn't do it. But did you encourage them to consider these options?
Again, this is not in my realm, but what I can say is that the EU was offering the closest possible form of cooperation. So what we have now, duty-free, quota-free exchange, is not the best scenario. And actually, the demand from the UK side was to keep their regulatory autonomy, and with this, of course, they cannot. You cannot have it all. If you have your own regulatory autonomy and you don't associate yourself with our SPS system, then you are confronted with all the border regulations and certificates that are now in place. So it is either one or the other. But the regulatory autonomy was one of the things that the UK wanted to achieve at all costs.
Okay. Next question is, would you consider a 6-month period of grace to enable the top-heavy paperwork and bureaucracy issues to be resolved? Perishable shellfish are being turned away at the borders sometimes because the wrong color of ink is being used on the forms.
What I understand, this is rather UK regulations and certificates. It's on the other side. So honestly, I'm not very strong there because I don't cover this sector. But from my knowledge, a lot depends on the regulatory and the certificate and other arrangements that at the border that come from the UK side, and this is normal because they now have to manage their customs space.
Just one thing. I mean, is the UK being picked out here, singled out? I mean, we're not in. We have no association agreements with the EU. We're not in the European Economic Area, and of course we're outside the EU. Are other countries in the same position? Which I can't think of any big countries nearby that are in the same position. But are other countries being treated when it comes to all this paperwork in the same way as the UK?
Honestly, the real difficulty of this deal is that it's a divorce deal where you have to separate and you have to lower the cooperation. So it was a unity that was that of course involved a lot of very close links, and now these links are cut. If we talk, for example, about Norway or about in general the European Economic Area, there actually the provisions of the single market apply there. So that is the difference. That's why the regulatory autonomy that was sought by the UK ended up in this type of agreement. So if they were to associate with all the rules of the single market, then this wouldn't have been the case. So it is either or. You can't have it all in a way. So that is the difference between the European Economic Area and the UK. As regards other countries, because there were a lot of references to Canada, for example, of course, there is approximation, and there was building more and giving more preferences. So it is a completely different direction of this agreement from a very well-linked economy. Now we are cutting links. So this is a completely different type of arrangement. It is unprecedented. So I don't think that I can recall of any other such agreement.
Yeah, Brexit means Brexit, as a former prime minister once said.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Indeed. Things like the landing obligation, the discard ban, stopping the throwing overboard of fish because they have no commercial value or above quota. Does the UK have to oblige by that? I mean, what agreement? And you could say this also on things like the control regulation and cameras on board ships. I mean, and what happens to EU vessels? Do they have to obey EU laws and UK laws if there's a difference in approach?
Actually, when our fishermen and fisherwomen fish in the UK waters, so they have to obey their rules. That is the rule in a way. On all the measures and control and enforcement, landing obligation including, we have to discuss now with the UK and see how we're going to really put together the two regulatory systems in place, because as I said, they have their regulatory autonomy, but we can see how we can negotiate and how we can consult each other on the implementation and control in our waters. The more it is aligned, the better for our fishermen. But indeed, in each EEZ, the rules of the party will apply, and if there is a difference in the rule, that is not optimal for our sector. So we have to try in this specialized committee to reach as much alignment as possible, and there should be a lot of communication also to our sector so that they are clear about this rule. For the moment, we are building up this new alignment.
Okay, and if the UK were to, for example, ban super trawlers, that is boats above a certain length, that is something. I mean, they would have the right to do that, would they? And the EU would simply have to stop. I don't know.
Yes.
Dutch trawlers of that size going into British waters.
Yes. But then this rule should apply equally to the British vessels. So that is
No, wait a minute. Sorry. You mean EU super trawlers could go into UK waters, but not?
No. So we have to obey when we fish in the UK EZ. We have to obey the rules of the UK, and these rules that they have to be consistently applied not only to the EU vessels but also to their own vessels. So that is the non-discrimination principle that is embedded in our agreement. So we have to really implement their regulatory framework in their exclusive economic zone. So that is the role.
Okay, thank you.
But
Right.
what is also very important is that the measures, the conservation measures or the management measures, they have to be proportionate. So that is one principle that is also important. That can so they have to be proportionate and non-discriminatory.
Or you can
Proportionate
introduce
meaning.
you can apply your sanctions of one kind or another if you wish to. Yeah. Yes, please define proportionate if you would like to.
Proportionate meaning that the tool that is implemented should be proportionate to the objective that needs to be achieved. So you can't have a super ban to achieve something that can be achieved with less effort. So the proportionality of the measures is there, and also the non-discrimination of the operators of each other's party. Yeah.
Can I ask about the Brexit Reserve Fund? I mean, I think it's 600 million euros.
Yes.
To compensate European, or to find ways of compensating coastal communities or EU fishermen. I'm not sure. I mean, 600 million seems quite a lot, seeing as most of them won't lose. It seems won't necessarily lose a great deal, especially if the stocks increase, as you've suggested. So how's that money going to be used, and is it available now? How can fishermen access it? What reasons do they have to give?
Normally, the idea was that it is available on the 1st of January, but it is still with the co-legislators, because the Commission drafted a proposal on the Brexit Adjustment Reserve, and now it entered the co-legislator space. Actually, the measures can be financed even retroactively from 1st of July, as far as I remember, and the 600 million, they are an indicative amount for fisheries. We managed to single out at least a kind of provisional amount so that it is visible for our fishermen and fisherwomen that there is a care taken for them. Of course, the way the Brexit Adjustment Reserve is constructed is giving a lot of space to the member state. So the member state will decide how to distribute what type of measures. Of course, we have a menu of measures, but they are entrusted to really make their way, knowing who suffers the most, to allocate this money to cushion the impact from Brexit.
Okay. Turning specifically with regard to the Irish situation, there's a question here about the problems being faced by the demersal fleet in Ireland, which they say are accentuated as a result of the deal, possibly because of the quota swapping issue too. Will DG MARE be seeking to increase Irish quotas in Irish waters to compensate for the loss of quota in UK waters? Or will Irish boat owners be asked to decommission their boats in order to keep the rest of the EU fleet afloat? So someone's feeling that Ireland is being, punished here.
Now, this is very much also in the Irish press. I would not comment so much. As I've said, we've been trying to have a level out burden between the member states concerned, but inevitably Ireland is so much close and so much interlinked with in terms of fisheries activities with the UK. So it's inevitable. No matter how much effort you do, you will really touch them in their activity. On the first question, I don't think so. On the second question, we are not going to request Ireland to do whatsoever. It is really for the Irish authorities and for the sector to sit together and see what they can do best and what will be the optimal solution out of this new reality in a way. We offer the support for any measures that might be designed on their side, and the new MFAF, which means European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. This is the new fund as of 2021 until 2027, it provides for measures of permanent cessation. So if there is an assessment that it is better to decommission and reduce the fleet to adjust to the new reality, then that will be done with the support of MFAF. So we were having yesterday as well. So yesterday was a nice day because we had the annual negotiation started with UK, but also we had a very nice meeting with all the managing authorities, the heads of managing authorities of the EMFF, the European Maritime Fisheries Fund, discussing the priorities for the new fund. And I was listening to the Irish representative that was with quite a negative start on how they have to design this fund. I think that every change, even I would not say it crisis, because crisis is the pandemic. Brexit is not a crisis. Brexit, we softened so much of all the impact that could have been there, but still it's a change, and this change is a good opportunity to reflect on anything that we have been postponing and reluctant to do, and we can become much more future proof and much more resilient. So this has to be part of this discussion, and if the Irish really decide that they have to scale down their fleet, there is a possibility for financial support from the MFAF.
Okay, thank you. Do we trust each other? You know, when it comes to the enforcement of the rules, do you think the rules are going to be enforced equally and effectively? I mean, you know, if an EU vessel is in British waters, it's supposed, presumably, is it supposed to follow EU rules and UK rules, or does it just?
I trust that we will be there. At the beginning, it will be more difficult, and my last email to the on the 31st of December, it was at 8 o'clock in the evening, was to send out to the member states, was to send out the rules, the new rules applicable as sent out from the UK partners in their waters. So we have to adjust to each other. So we need the communication of the new rules. We need an understanding of the new rules. For the moment, there are not so many new rules on the UK side. Probably that can increase or probably not. We have to see how it will evolve. So I trust that we will be prudent and that we will be in good faith implementing this agreement. This is the only positive and sustainable way of approaching this new situation.
While I've got you here, can I ask about marine protected areas and the Commission's plans for ensuring, as I think the Commissioner said at his hearing, you know, we've got to stop these things simply being paper protection, and there's going to be real protection. And of course, there was an announcement from the UK government that it was, I think, consulting or determining that it was going to ban trawlers from a section of the Dogger Bank, which is, of course, a marine protected area, which I suppose from the conservation point of view will be regarded as very good news and a very good indication of the future. So is the UK actually, when it comes to sustainability and conservation, actually taking a march on the rest of the European Union, because the EU is being too slow in ensuring that its range of MPAs is extended and protected?
Actually, since you mentioned the Dogger Bank, we have a history there because we've been trying to do as much as we can there. So we have a joint recommendation. We have a staff, the Scientific, Technical, and Economic Fisheries Committee opinion, and so on. We have to analyze now what the UK is announcing. So we are going to analyze it. If that is the case, we will the catches will be affected. But we have to analyze what the UK announced. So this is what I can say at the moment. I cannot prejudge our analysis of this. And on the marine protected areas, you know that the target is very clear. We have 30% that has to be covered by such. But as I'm saying all the time, it does not say that fisheries will not happen there. It's only for the 10% where we will have such a strict regime. So for the rest, we have to design the appropriate measures where and how fisheries can happen. So that is, we are committed to really go hand in hand with sustainability. What I will use the opportunity now to say is that we have a number now of good examples, and it's not only in this northern part of the EU, but also in the Mediterranean part. We have a number of good examples where MPAs actually produce the spillover effect of increased biomass, and now we have fishermen that are claiming the positive effects on their business as a result of the MPAs. But you are absolutely right, Chris, that it shouldn't be a paperwork. So if we want to benefit of these MPAs, we need to implement the measures that stay behind. So uh, implementation is always something that has to be taken care of much more consistently, and it is less sexy. It's sexy to put something, a regulatory framework, and then the implementation is the diligent day-to-day work. So we have to implement.
So do we need a new European Commission initiative, or is this up to member states to apply existing regulations properly?
So I think I'm not certain about that. What we are going to do is, according to the biodiversity strategy, we have a number of measures that we have to apply. So for the 30%, I'm not certain at this moment, but what we are going to do is to provide a report on the technical measures under the technical measures regulation, and it is very much on the implementation side. And we will have also an action plan for conservation of the fisheries resources. So these are two things that are very much on our agenda as a result of the biodiversity strategy.
Good, glad to hear it. I won't press you to ask you when this initiative will come forward, but I do recall the Commissioner, speaking very positively about the need for properly protected marine protected areas at his hearing, which I was joint chairing. And so, I'm sure members of the European Parliament will want to hold him to account to ensure that is delivered. Just on this general point, and we're just coming to an end now. I mean, on this whole business of building up stocks and protecting the biodiversity and the ecosystems, which we talk about a lot. But, in all the Brexit debate and all this debate about, the trade agreement, the word sustainability and the number of fish in the seas and the fact we've got so few fish compared to 50 years ago. I mean, these issues never came up. It was always about, can one side hold on to the quota it's got, and can the other side take quota from whereas in fact the whole volume of fish could increase. And yet I've never understood why the fishing industry is not more supportive of that approach.
Yeah, it's not an easy question. Actually, let's separate into. So the first question is about the negotiations with external partners. On our side, we always have the sustainability element underlying our offers, our estimates, and we always honor when the sustainability argument comes on the other side. So sustainability is a holding principle in our negotiations, not only internally but also externally. With regard to the fishing industry, it is always a battle between the short term and the long term, or the short term and the medium/long term. Because if we take care for the stocks, then we need cuts of the total allowable catch, which is a pain currently and next year. And even knowing that this cut will produce in 3 or 4 years' time higher business opportunities, this dynamic battle between the current and the future always decides in the end how much sustainable we will be. So I will put it this way. It is also very much a political game, and I'm sorry to say that, but we have always ministers that are discussing tax, and ministers, their projection is now. They want their sector to be happy now. So again, this clinch and clash between the short-term availability of fish, which might jeopardize the stock the stock's health in the future, but now they can and have the fish, and the thinking of the future of cutting now with a projection of increased profitability in the future. So this clash is always there.
Well, thank you. And just a final note, and back to the cooperation agreement. I think you said that we want a tradition established. You said this to the Fisheries Committee in the Parliament. We want a tradition established of good faith and good cooperation. I think just at the moment, you know, as you hinted, we're quite far away from that. I mean, people are feeling very bruised and hurt, and you know, but maybe at an officer level, at a level of you who are, you know, have been involved before Brexit and are involved now in the actual details of fisheries policy, maybe that good cooperation and trust can exist.
I think it exists, and as you've said, at the level of our teams, we always kept the tone very moderate. Though there was a lot of passion in these negotiations and a lot of stakes, what we managed to do during these Brexit negotiations was to keep the good tone and to lay the ground for a good tone and good cooperation afterwards. So seeing how it starts this year, I'm more convinced than not that we will manage. Of course, a different level is how the sector feels, and as you said, there are bruises that are there, and we need time for this to pass. But it is also a big responsibility for the politicians to calm the situation down and to establish a different tone, because UK and the EU, honestly, we need to be partners. We are bound to be partners. We are so close, value-wise, mentally, and traditionally. So we should not lose the opportunity to have a true partnership at all levels. And this has to be built. It cannot be built with hate speech. It cannot be built by, you know, abusing the truth. It has to be a relationship in good faith. And I personally am prepared to walk the talk. I'm very much genuinely convinced in that, and well, I will make all the effort.
Thank you very much, Charlina. I'm Chris Davies. I've had the pleasure of talking with the Director General of DG MARE in the European Commission, Charlina Vitcheva, about the trade and cooperation agreement signed between the EU and the UK. This has been a Blue Deal debate sponsored by the consultancy of Wood Pedersen Public Affairs in Brussels. I hope you've enjoyed it. Of course, it's available to hear again on the website Political Festival.